So in this video, we're going to discuss three-step compliance teaching. So three-step compliance teaching is a technique we use at New Meadow for 100% of our directions. We use this on every direction we give throughout the day at New Meadow. It's based on the three-term contingency that we discussed in our previous video. So antecedent, behavior, and consequence. It's what you should be using for all of your redirections when you're ignoring and redirecting. And it's based on modulated praise. So that praise or reinforcement comes in big with three-step compliance teaching. So let's jump right into the steps of three-step compliance teaching. So step one. Step one, you're going to state your demand or your direction. This is going to be your redirection. So if you're ignoring and redirecting, your step one is the redirection. Your demand should be enthusiastic and upbeat. The child should want to do what you're asking them to do. If the child responds correctly after you state the demand or the direction or the redirection, you're going to want to throw the party. Great job. I love it. You did it. Give them tickles, whatever that child finds really reinforcing. You want to make it big. You want to throw the party. If the child does not respond, or the child responds incorrectly, move to step two. So step two of three-step compliance teaching. You're going to state the demand and provide a visual model of whatever the demand is. So if it was building with blocks, you're going to take those blocks and you're going to build with them. If it was walking feet, you're going to show the child how to walk. If the child responds correctly after the visual model, you're going to modulate your praise. You're going to give them a more neutral praise. Something like, that's better. You did it, but you didn't do it when I really wanted you to do it. If there's no response or an incorrect response, move on to step three. So step three of three-step compliance teaching. So you're going to state your demand while physically assisting the child in completing the demand. So if you were building with those blocks, you're going to take your child's hand and you're physically going to help them build with those blocks. If we're asking your child to have walking feet and they're still running or they're sitting on the floor, you're going to physically help them walk. At this point, there is no praise. You're using a firm but neutral voice. I call it my business tone. So you're going to say something like, we're building with blocks, or we're using walking feet. Something that tells your child you mean business, but it's not harsh, it's not criticizing, and it's not yelling. After you provide the physical assistance, you're going to move on to something new. You're going to start with a clean slate. Your next demand should be upbeat, enthusiastic. You want to get your child to want to engage with you at that point. I think you can tell with three-step compliance teaching and ignore and redirection, the key to success is really that praise component. And I think that's true in any behavior modification you're trying to implement. Providing appropriate attention at appropriate times. At our classrooms at New Meadow, kids are being reinforced for positive behaviors every 30 to 60 seconds. We're constantly looking around the room and trying to find a kid engaged in the appropriate behavior and giving them attention for that, rather than any attention to those negative behaviors. Praise doesn't always have to be verbal praise. And verbal praise is that, I love what you're doing, good job, keep up the good work. It can be a thumbs up from across the room. It can be a little squeeze or a little tickle, a little pat on the back. Any of those kind of physical touches can also be very reinforcing to children. One tip I always try to give my parents that I work with is maybe kind of start setting a timer. Use your cell phone and have it vibrate every 3 to 5 minutes. And that can kind of serve as a reminder to kind of look up and see what your child's doing and give them some positive attention, even if they're just sitting on the couch watching TV. I love how quiet you're being right now. Great job. And that's a natural way to provide more positive reinforcement throughout your day and teach the child, all this good stuff happens when I'm doing good stuff. And then your negative behaviors are naturally going to decrease because they're getting more attention for the positive behaviors. At New Meadow School, we use ignoring redirection and three-step compliance all day, every day. Three-step compliance is used with 100% of our demands. So every demand we place, we are following through on it with our 3 steps from three-step compliance. And it really lends itself to an environment where compliance is expected. Children know I can do it on the first time and all this great stuff happens, or I can go to the 3rd step and they're gonna help me and it's not as much fun. The beauty of 3-step compliance is also it's a behavior modification strategy, and it's also a teaching strategy. With that model in the middle, you're showing the child what they need to be doing. So you're naturally teaching them what they should be doing. And that's the beauty of 3-step compliance. As a parent, if you would like to start using 3-step compliance in your home, I say, start off easy. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Start with 1 or 2 demands. And once you're really good with those 1 or 2 demands and using your 3-step, add another demand and then add another demand. And before you know it, you're going to be using 3-step compliance all day, every day. The other thing is when you first start to implement it and your child's not used to it, you may be going to the 3rd step quite a bit. But as they learn that you expect their compliance and you're using your praise effectively, they're gonna want to do it on step 1. So before you know it, you're only using step 1 or step 2 and not having to go to that 3rd step every time. So just some tips and tricks for 3-step compliance. Whenever you're placing demands, you're gonna wanna use minimal words. Make your demand short and sweet. So play with blocks or walking feet or go to garbage. Keep your demands really short and sweet so that your child knows exactly what you're asking them to do. If you use too many words, the demand can get lost. On steps 2 and 3, your tone should always be neutral, never harsh, criticizing, or yelling. Avoid feeding or speaking demands. You just can't follow through on feeding or speaking demands. So you don't want to provide those demands and expect compliance because you don't have a way to follow through on it. So for feeding demands, better demands are, touch it to your lips or smell it, because you can follow through on those. Speaking demands, maybe if your child has emerging language, kind of stick to those receptive skills. Point to, show me, because you can follow through on those. Another tip for 3-step compliance is you want to avoid demands you can't follow through on. So if you are cooking dinner and your child's playing in the living room and they're climbing on the couch and they know they should only be sitting on the couch, you don't want to be shouting from the kitchen, sit down, if you can't follow through on it, because that's going to lend itself to an environment where non-compliance is kind of accepted. If you're running late and you tell your child to put their shoes on and they don't do it, and you wind up telling them 5 times to put their shoe on and they still don't have their shoe on, and you just kind of go over and huff and puff and put the shoe on. They're learning, it takes 5 times before mom just comes over and does it. So it's once again lending itself to non-compliance. So you really want to be careful to not place demands if you can't follow through on them. If you're running late, you can say something like, hey, let me help you put your shoe on today. So you're cutting down on that time. You really want to start following through on every demand you place if you want to create a culture where compliance is expected.